Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Tuesday, October 1st. Today is day 361. There's a lot of news to share. Please be in prayer for de-escalation. And how should the story be told of what's transpired in the Middle East tonight? It's 10:30 here in Egypt and Cairo. We were told that the Israelis have been given permission, that it's safe for them to leave their shelters. The initial notifications that they got on their phone a couple of hours ago was that the initial reports that it was safe for them to leave was digital warfare from Iran, that those were false reports, but that now it is safe for them to leave their shelters. And Palestinians in the occupied territories have no shelters to go to. One Palestinian was reportedly killed in the occupied territories near Jericho by an Iron Dome rocket shrapnel. There was a shooting attack in Israel near Jaffa. Two armed gunmen, suspects were reportedly from Hebron, near Jaffa in just outside of a train terminal, opened fire. At least 6 people are reported dead. Some news has reported that 8 people were killed, another 16 were wounded. That shooting happened during the rocket attack from Iran tonight, which was a counterattack from Israel's bombing of Lebanon and Hezbollah targets, which I will talk about. 5 others in that shooting were or are in critical or serious condition, and 16 additional people were wounded. Throughout the day, I was in touch with friends and Christian colleagues at seminaries and universities and ministries throughout Lebanon. And then upon hearing that Iran was going to attack, the US was given forenotice. We were in touch with friends in Palestine and also contacts in Israel. And tonight I was glued to my phone for several hours, and we watched as videos were coming in of the sky lighting up as colleagues, friends, and loved ones were in touch, letting us know what was happening this evening. So news reported in the past hour or two from Reuters, this is from Jerusalem and Beirut, again, it's October 1st, that Iran fired a salvo of ballistic missiles at Israel. I'm just kind of starting with what's most recent and working my way backwards. The Iranian attack happened most recently today on Tuesday, tonight, in retaliation for Israel's campaign against Hezbollah in Lebanon, specifically the killing of Nasrallah, the other Israeli attacks that have been happening the past week or so, including the hundreds of people killed in the Israeli bombings of Hezbollah targets, the explosions of the pagers. Explosions could be heard in Jerusalem in the Jordan River Valley as Israelis piled into bomb shelters. And honestly, it was really scary. I heard from friends in Bethlehem that said their kids were terrified. I heard from one of our staff in Israel who said, that it was really scary having bombs, in the sky and having the shooting happen, which was right in her neighborhood. And again, Palestinians in the occupied territories have no shelters to go to. And in Gaza, there is no safe place to be. And this is what life has been like in Gaza for the last 11 months. Reporters on state television lay flat on the ground during live broadcasts. Reports indicate that Tehran gave both Russia and the US advance word of the strikes. I received a world alert from the Washington Post saying that, Iran's strike would happen within the next 12 hours. A few hours later, it began. Haaretz reported that sirens blared across Israel on Tuesday evening after Iran launched a massive barrage of 180 missiles. Loud explosions heard in Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, south of the country. Israeli emergency services said there were no Israeli casualties reported so far as a result of the attack. Israel briefly closed their airspace following the barrage and has since reopened it. There have been tons of flights canceled. I was supposed to fly out of Israel next week and can't get a flight out, and I'm scheduled to travel out of Jordan. In April, Iran launched its first ever attack on Israel, which involved cruise missiles and drones. You'll recall there was a Bedouin youth that was injured that then recovered. The Israeli military promised to launch raids in full force throughout the Middle East in response to the numerous attacks tonight and today. Iran did say that it launched missiles. It said that it will attack again if Israel responds. Tehran's mission to the UN said that this attack was legal, that it was rational, and it was a legitimate response to Israel's terrorist attacks towards it. Iran said, should the Zionist regime dare to respond or commit further acts of malfeasance, a subsequent and crushing response will ensue, or malevolence, I guess was the word they used. US President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris are monitoring the situation from the Situation Room. They're receiving regular updates from the national security teams. According to the White House, Biden ordered the U.S. military to aid Israel's defense and shoot down missiles targeting it. In the West Bank today, a 25-year-old was killed. Dia Hani Abed al-Rahman by IDF fire in the Balata refugee camp near Nablus in the West Bank. And today is President Jimmy Carter's 100th birthday. He wrote the book, Peace, Not Apartheid. Goodness, I wish we were much closer to peace than apartheid. Just days away from the year's anniversary of October 7th, I woke up to the news this morning in Cairo that Israel had launched a ground operation in Lebanon overnight. So last night, Israel launched its ground operation into Lebanon. The IDF said it's a limited, localized, targeted raid on the ground aimed at destroying Hezbollah's infrastructure, pushing fighters away from the Israeli border after 11 months of drone and rocket strikes on northern Israel. A U.S. official told the Post on Monday that Israel has said the operation will be limited in scope and smaller than its ground invasion of Lebanon in 2006. The 2006 invasion was a very significant war between Hezbollah and Israel. Israeli officials said there will be no long-term occupation of South Lebanon. The ground invasion aims to remove immediate threats along the border and Hezbollah's ability to infiltrate northern Israel, but they did not say how long the duration would be. Lebanon's Prime Minister Makati said his country is facing one of its most dangerous phases and that around 1 million Lebanese civilians have already been displaced. That was BBC. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu addressed the Iranian public in a video that was released yesterday, suggesting that there's a regime change on the horizon in Iran. This is Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister. He said to the Iranian public, when Iran is finally free, and that moment will come a lot sooner than people think, everything will be different. The people of Iran should know that Israel stands with you, Politico reported. We've heard in the Middle East that the thought of what's been happening is that there must be an Israeli secret service or there must be an infiltration somehow in terms of security, somehow within Iranian-backed groups for Israel to have so effectively been able to remove such senior leaders such as Ismail Haniyeh, the Beirut assassination, he was killed in Tehran, the assassination of the Hezbollah leader, of course, Nasrallah in Beirut, the efficiency of the Israelis in cutting off these heads of these militant groups, which has had such devastating effects on civilians, is really an astounding military defeat. It's also a violation of international law, and these are really bad actors. And yet the concern is that if there's not an immediate counterbalance to it, that part of what it's creating is animosity that will be present in generations to come. And so there's deep, deep concern about that on the ground here in the Middle East. The UN peacekeeping force in Lebanon, UNIFIL, said today that the Israeli military had notified it of Israel's intention to undertake the operation in Lebanon. And Israeli airstrikes killed 3 people and injured 9 others in Damascus, according to the Syrian state media. During a call today, the IDF the defense minister, Gallant, told Lloyd Austin, our defense secretary, that during a call, our Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin agreed on the necessity of dismantling the Hezbollah attack infrastructure along the border, according to a Pentagon statement. And, part of what we've been looking at is it seems like U.S. political actors and our foreign policy is just along for the ride with whatever Israel says. Israel wants to have a ground invasion, into Lebanon, and the U.S. says, we think that's, go for it. We want to, and part of what I'm hearing on the ground here in the Middle East is that the U.S. is saying, hey, the only answer is a diplomatic solution, but then we keep sending bombs. And I'm really grateful for the Iron Dome on nights like tonight, and the fact that we have loved ones, who are in Israel and in Palestine, who are protected by that defense system, but we keep militarizing and we keep further escalating the situation by further militarizing it and providing more and more and more weapons. And what we are hearing on the ground here in Egypt is words like this: how hypocritical that the U.S. stands by while so many women and children are being killed throughout the Middle East, in Gaza, in Lebanon. On the one hand, the U.S. says we have to have diplomatic resolutions. The only answer is a comprehensive ceasefire, a ceasefire between Hezbollah and Israel, a ceasefire between Hamas and Israel. And on the other hand, the U.S. keeps sending more and more and more weapons. Politico reported that the senior White House officials privately told Israel that Washington would support its decision in a military pressure against Hezbollah, even as the Biden administration publicly was saying they should de-escalate. So behind the scenes, the White House is saying, go ahead, we support you using military against Hezbollah, and publicly they're saying de-escalate. And this is an example of what Middle Eastern actors are saying. It's American hypocrisy, it's duplicity. And so part of what we're looking at is, in terms of the Biden administration, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Stop this public communication and then what's happening behind the scenes constantly contradicting itself. A U.S. National Security Council spokesperson said that the Israelis would be conducting limited operations to destroy Hezbollah's infrastructure. This is in line with Israel's right to defend its citizens and safely return civilians to their home. This is the U.S. saying this. Ultimately, a diplomatic resolution is the only way to achieve lasting stability. So again, it's fine. Go ahead, conduct. This is like the Rafah red line, right? Rafah is a red line. Don't invade Rafah, but we're going to give you weapons to do it. It's the same type thing. It's this, we're just so unclear. It's like, come on, US, we can do better. Oh, Lord have mercy. The Washington Post reported the Pentagon will deploy a few thousand additional US troops and more warplanes to the Middle East. This was announced yesterday. Sources said the Biden administration is bracing for retaliatory action for Tehran's network of militias and armed groups. And reports suggest that the US sent 3 additional squadrons to the Middle East, in addition to the 3 that are already there. This is from CENTCOM. F-15Es, F-16s, and A-10s are arriving in the region, with 1 squadron already having arrived. Qatar and UAE have expressed solidarity with Lebanon after Israeli forces crossed into the border overnight. Separately, Turkey and Israel's offenses. Turkey said Israel's offensive was an illegal attempt at occupation that violated Lebanese's territorial integrity. This is speaking about that border invasion into Lebanon that happened last night. The UK government has chartered a commercial flight out of Lebanon to assist British nationals trying to flee the fighting. And the past day, Reuters reported that Israeli airstrikes killed 21 people in Gaza, according to local medics. Palestinian health officials said at least 13 people were killed in 2 airstrikes on the Nuseirat refugee camp. The death toll in Gaza is at least 41,638 Palestinians, 96,460 wounded since October 7th. We are continuing to call for the release of hostages. We are continuing to call that Palestinians held unjustly in prison would be released from Israeli prisons. AP News reported that the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, said a top Hamas commander killed in Lebanon yesterday was one of its employees who had been suspended since allegations of his ties with Hamas emerged in March. UNRWA's chief, Lazzarini, has denied knowing that the employee was an Hamas commander. According to the New York Times, Saudi Arabia has pledged funding for the Palestinian Authority, signaling renewed Saudi backing for Palestinian statehood that could help mend relations between Riyadh and the body that administers the West Bank. And finally, Syria's state media reported 3 people killed and 9 wounded in an Israeli airstrike on Damascus, according to their state media. Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy. We are praying that things would really de-escalate, that there would be a comprehensive and permanent ceasefire on all fronts. May the Lord go before us towards peace. Amen.